Unauthorized media.
As she was raising you during that time, what was her expectations for you, and did she set an expectation that you better, or even during that time, your dad, what was the expectations from your parents?
They didn't really have like expectations
Mm-hmm.
like that, like what
Mm-hmm.
most parents would have, or what you
Yeah.
expect as a Asian parent.
Yeah.
It was more like make sure you get good grades, because I
Yeah.
had bad grades in school. So I think what they really wanted was for me to get good grades.
Mm-hmm.
Never happened. I think I graduated high school with like a 2.7 GPA.
You
And
graduated. A lot
yeah,
of people didn't make that graduation walk. I didn't. I certainly didn't. I
you did
didn't. I
not.
did the highest grade, and I kid you not with this, the highest grade I completed. Listen, so I was a great student.
Yeah.
I've always found myself to be like, I was in middle school. I was a 4.0 student. Middle school,
Oh,
I went
wow.
to like the lowest GPA that I had in middle school in a quarter was like 3.83, and I was a 4.0 student. And at that point, during that time though, it was an all like majority white school, just because of just the whole busing people out to equal out the counts of cultures and ethnicities in each one. I forget what they call that, right? But they bust me out about 30 minutes away. That area, over in Ballard. I went to a place called Whitman. So that in itself, Whitman, you put an E in the middle, it's just a bunch of Caucasian kids,
Yeah.
and it stepped me up, bro. It stepped me up to where I was like, I'm in nature very competitive, and just in life, because and that also, if I ever get a chance to tell my story like on another pod, I definitely will do that. When I came to the US, like there was just from day one survival.
Yeah.
And at that point, when I got into that new community, that new school, new surroundings, taking a look around, it's like, yo, everybody's white. Very small percentage of, just like blacks and Asians and everything like that, right? I'd felt, and in the classes that I was in, it was in honors classes. So majority of those kids were definitely up there.
Yeah.
And they were also, I don't believe they're competitive, but there was that attitude of like, yeah, this is, this, we've got this, and this is the type of, stuff that we're supposed to be in. So I killed it. That's middle school. As soon as middle school was done, and came back to, and I was assigned to Franklin High School, which is the South End. Now, after being there for like 3 years of fully dealing with the surroundings of just, just the that mentality and surroundings of just the white folks, right? You come
Yeah.
back. Franklin High School was at the very beginning of gangs, clicking, Asians, and I just didn't know. I didn't like the people that also went to Franklin High School from that high school. They clicked up, the white friends that I made. They clicked up with the rest of the whites, and
Oh,
at
wow.
that point, I didn't have that belonging to that particular grouping. So I started my own. That's why I fell into the gangs. First quarter, 3.8, 3.9 or something like that, right? Second quarter, points point something.
You stopped going to school.
It dropped just because that social aspect disappeared. I just didn't
Your
know where. Yeah, the environment, and I started losing myself, and that's the highest grade that I completed was 8th grade.
Wow.
The highest grade I completed was 8th grade.
So then
Like
you got your
credit
GED?
wise, I didn't get my GED until I want to say about like during COVID.
What?
So I made
This
yes.
whole time you didn't
This
have
whole
high school?
time, this whole time. And what bailed me out, bro, and I spiraled. Like my relationship with my parents, very bad. I put them through hell, and I put myself through hell, because there was the quick story, okay, and the reason why and this is my toxicity as far as just dealing with like Asian parent toxicity.
Yeah.
I can't. My grandma came to the U.S. So no, hold on. So my grandparents came here. My Lolo and his two brothers came here in the early '70s. They went to. They got sponsored in Yakima or Wapato, okay, or Eastern Washington.
Oh,
They were
okay.
on the They were in the farms,
The farms too.
and you don't really spend a lot of money over there while you're farming, but they're working their butts off. And my grandpa Roy, who's my first grandpa's brother, he then decided to put the community together. Remember, I told you Filipino Community Center over in Wapato. So he
Yeah.
put that together. But anyway, so they had already established here. My grandpa basically wanted to bring us over here. So it was hard to actually petition for the entire family to come here. So, and my grandma just had this, this thing towards me. So I was like, I want to bring him. I want to bring him. So she brought me, and I actually had to adopt my grandparents' last name. So there was a point to where, in government wise, my parents were my siblings.
Oh
When I
wow.
got here, I really didn't understand why I was even here. There really wasn't a thorough conversation. I was 5 years old. I turned 6 over here. There really wasn't, like, I thought I was going somewhere like up north in the PI, right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, like
America.
18 hours later, I'm over here and it's just a brand new world, right? And I'm now living with my grandparents. They're my parents, supposedly. I have to learn English. I came here in like June. Things, if you don't explain things to children and kind of break it down, they start creating their own truths.
Yep.
And I started developing my own truths. So it was like, hey, they replaced me. I was like, I'm not that important. They never even, and that's when there was this distancing between me and my parents. And at that point, there was a very long time where I didn't respect them. Very long time. And that was kind of my path. I was already struggling during like 8th grade itself, just to like the home life. Just the home life. I was we and like just like yourself, there's probably like 8 people in one house in a small duplex, maybe like 1,000 square foot home, right? And we were all just kind of like stepping on top of each other and just bunking, and it was just hard. But then after that, once I checked into high school and I didn't have that core group that I had over at in core environment that I can always like travel to with school, with like with just the white folks and just like stability. Then you throw me into this high school to where it's just like now I have to like remake myself. The only thing that made sense and I felt like I fit in and belonged in, it was just the Filipino groupings there. But unfortunately, the group that I ran into was into gangs. And that was the only thing that is like, that was my second family, because when I came home, I didn't feel like that was that. I still had this, this animosity that nobody ever tried to succumb. And I didn't
So
want to like,
when did you forgive them, or like realize, not forgive them because they didn't do anything wrong, but
no, no, they definitely didn't. But as someone, as a kid growing up, you start for like you have this animosity, regardless, even if they were perfect parents. Like a lot of these kids that are going on social media, like that's the easiest thing that you can do is just exist and just listen. But then a lot of the stuff that they're complaining about, that's just it's it's just packaged so roughly to where they it's there's not enough finesse in that
they
to
don't
where
even know
it's
the
just
struggles of their parents.
they really don't know. And this is very sensitive, and I don't blame them either, because
Yeah.
that's the whole point of us creating better environment, right? I don't want my kids to even see what the heck I went through. And the fact that all this stuff is that they might be complaining to me about, that's so petty, and I'm glad that it's petty, because we came from deep, we came from nothing, right? So when you were saying it's like how, like at one point then I start forgiving, there was a long road to where they didn't really explain the truth behind, or just really kind of just settled things with me, because I was already kind of just out and about and everything like that. But
Yeah.
then there was this long path to where I slowly created excuses for them. And throughout that long path, I like was during those excuses, I studied my parents and I kind of took steps back to was like, this is why they did it. I need to understand why my dad didn't really step in, and I understand why my mom didn't really step in. I started creating excuses for it. Then I constantly had to like, you know, create these things in my head, reasons as to why she didn't do that. Because I was such in a bad place. I'd be like, yeah, no, this messed up. But I got tired of feeling bad for myself as a victim for that, but I was like, you know what? No, I see them. They're good people. They did this for the right thing. So I started like psychoanalyzing them. And then I started like applying reasons as to why they really did that.
Mm-hmm.
And as I played it through, now I understand. Once you understand and place knowledge on what your problem really is, if you really understand that, it's no longer a problem because you now understand it.
So now,
And
do you have
along
a
the
healthy relationship with them now?
we lost a lot of time that we're never going to get back as a son to parents,
Yeah.
because but the amount of time that we have left now is really just it's just every single engagement that we have, it's going to have to be as pure as I can, because that's we're running out of time.
Yeah.
They're up there in age and we're running out of time, and I have no qualms in being this new person to them now, because there is kind of just that weirdness of like there's such a huge gap that we weren't these people. Then all of a sudden now we're like, I love you, put my arm around you type of a thing, right?
Mm. When
There's
was the last
got to
time
be
you
that
seen them?
leap. There's got to be a leap from one side to understand both sides.
When was the last time you seen them?
I FaceTime my mom on her birthday on the 24th.
Oh,
We do it once in a while. I mean, the world's a much
4th
smaller
of
place.
May.
Yep.
Oh
I'll see
shit!
them
My
in
mom's
September.
21st.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's it's easy for me because mine's June 24th, and hers is a month earlier. So I yeah, I check in, and it's just that's already a huge win just for those types of
Yeah.
conversations between us.
Super
But
win.
yeah, but when I hear these kids talk about these things, right? Just the way they're feeling and how the parents, I see it, I understand it,
Hmm.
but it's such a long tunnel until they see the light of to
Yeah.
where that specific packaging is, rip it open, because you have to understand who's wrapping those words out for you. It's also another person that could have been hurt, and that could have not have had much else put onto them. Imagine your grandparents. Your grandparents talking to your parents. That relationship right there is already what the cycle is to you. So if you can understand how your mom, like for myself, I mean my grandpa he was a babaero. He's freaking had two or three wives
Oh
and
wow.
five girlfriends, right? So my mom then seeing that and knowing that, and there's some sort of a normalcy to that, then she becomes this hardened person. And then she's like, okay, well, I should act like this, and still not dealing with the hurt or the stuff that she dealt with. Now she's putting that to the next generation.
Yeah.
But once you understand how
Projecting.
that yeah, exactly, projecting, not now understanding my mom and why she is, and you don't feel hatred, you don't feel like any animosity towards her, mainly because you have to feel sorry that she actually had to deal with that whole thing and didn't know how to
She was a
express herself.
victim
Yeah,
with
those
without.
less the lessons that she would say in these harsh words were wrapped in their gifts, wrapped in newspaper, tattered clothing, bad memories. And you got to find it within that, to where it's like, I see where it's all what you're trying to come through, but you just didn't know any better because that's what you were given. And
Mhm.
that's how your gifts were also provided to you as a youth. So it doesn't take, it takes so long to find that out though. With these kids, they're going to go on social media and talk about this all the time, and how it's just, you're projecting this to other nationalities out there, just because it is a melting pot. It doesn't look right, but at the same time, you know what? We're you gotta unwrap it,
Mhm.
unwrap it. Yeah, sorry for that tangent, man. I just, whenever it starts
No,
getting towards that, I'm like, yeah, it puts me in
yeah.
that.
No, that's good. That was good. Because then I don't think a lot of people really know where you're coming from.
Yeah,
Right.
that's cold rice. Have I explained to you exactly what that is?
No.
Where the actual name is, like, so my parents, so when they came to the US, and my Lola, even, it's like they would be so busy. My parents and my dad worked two jobs. My mom, worked super early in the morning and everything like that. And I would put them through hell during that time, right? Like I said, I was a bad kid. But every time I came home, I would do like bingers once in a while. It's like every time I came home, there's still that there's still that cold rice on the table. There's still cold rice in the
Wait
rice
for you.
cooker. Yeah, for you, her kids. And that in itself is, in a bowl or in a rice cooker, unconditional love, to where it's like, it doesn't matter where we're at in our lives. We're all working for one thing, is just, and to also just, it's just that one love. It's unconditional love in a bowl, and that's what I always reflect to. And it's like, it's also the same thing, like in my home. I have that in the back of my head. Although I'm a lot more present than my parents. It's like, I gotta have food. So with
Yeah.
foods, that's why it always goes back to the cold rice.
Mm, I could see that. I could see, coming home
Coming home, it's like,
and
man, mom and dad probably are pissed at me. I haven't talked to
yeah,
them for, a day. Or like, oh dang, I had such a hard day, and just of nothingness. But it's very important to me. You go to the table, and there's like, how you have the little mosquito thing that you place
yeah,
on top. There's a
yeah,
bowl right underneath there, and you're like, it's always there.
with
It's
the
always there.
vinegar and soy sauce and
Yes, sir.
tomatoes
The
and onion
tomatoes on the
and
side, yeah.
chili. It's all there.
Yeah, you can just put some. You can just put some evaporated milk or some condensed milk and some sugar on there, and then you've got a meal, bro.
Yeah. Or there's the fried fish.
There's always, and the house always smells like fried fish when you
I'm like,
you
man,
get home.
why couldn't we grow up with the dirty kitchen?
Oh, no, that's wild. So yeah, I mean, topics like these, I just, especially in the Filipino family, and you definitely grew up in the nice auntie side. For me,
Mhm.
you've had the mom that was basically, had just always just didn't really put this thing above you, to where you had to really be a certain specific person.
Well, one thing with my mom is, um, she was like a hardcore Catholic, right?
Hmm.
But she prayed a lot, and she had like this spiritual gift of discerning,
Mm.
and also, patience, right? But she could look around the room and all the friends that I bring in, and the moment she starts talking to them, and she's like, "Oh yeah, this is the ugali."
Uh
Ugali,
huh. Yeah. Yeah.
like character or
Just her character. Yeah.
personality, and she can tell you exactly how that person is. She's
Right
very
off.
observant right off the bat, and I'm like, "Whoa, how did you know?" She goes, "Because you could just tell." It's like, I spent a lot of time with this person. You have one encounter, and you already know how that person is.
Hmm.
And then when she tells me, I'm like, "Oh shoot, I didn't really think about that." When she breaks it down, so she could break things down. And it's like, "How do you know this?" She goes, "I went to school for nursing. We have to take psychology." So she knew like psychology really really well, and I think that's how she raised us, um, is the psychological part. And she probably knew that if she raised us in a certain way, that it could pretty much break us all down.
Yeah. Yeah.
So she had to be strategic on the way that she raised us. Whenever my parents argue, they never argued in front of us. Really, they
Hmm.
went to their room and they would argue in there. Whenever they had issues, they'd go inside the room. Like I remember when my uncle passed away, um, my aunt's husband. We didn't even know it until we took him to the airport, and my mom was like, and we were young, right? She's like, "Yeah, your aunt and your cousins are gonna go home and they're gonna find out that their dad is dead." I'm like, "What?" Right? And I was like,
Those words are just like, especially you sit there and you convey that to molding minds is, yeah.
"Yeah." And I used to wonder why they didn't tell him. Like, why wouldn't you tell them? But growing up, I realized, she didn't want them to go on a 16-hour trip with that flustered, mind. It's like they're gonna find out anyway. So she's like, We'll wait until they land and they're safe and they're at the house with the family, versus
Hmm.
being alone, with two kids on a
Yeah.
trip."
Yeah. More of a support system
Yeah,
for the
support
grieving.
system, right? And but that's how she always was. She was like really when it came to our psychological, our mind.
Hmm.
But that's why she had to reverse it when my aunt was saying that you're a bad kid. She goes, "No, you're a
Hmm.
good kid." She's like,
Yeah.
"Whenever people tell you're a bad kid, don't believe them."
She's a one-off. She's such a one-off. It's again, I don't fault any of my elders, any of my aunts, my uncles, or anything like that. But your mom herself is much of a one-off. How are you? How are grown up like that? I mean, I don't even want to ask you. How are you as a parent now? After all that, it's just, are you? So, well, yeah, actually, let me ask you that. So, with such, I guess there's a much more lenient path for you with regards to, like, just the expectations and everything like that. You're doing fine. You've got such a great head on your shoulders. You know, your insights, your stories, the way you have formed yourself as an adult, to be a parent to these kids. How are you now, and what is are you placing expectations, or are you kind of going about it the same way as mom?
No, I think I'm different. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but our parents never really challenged us
Okay.
growing up, right? And that's one thing I do with the kids is I I try to challenge them, but sometimes I could be toxic the way that I do it,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Oh yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know because it's like what you said, these kids have no idea the way that, you know, we lived, even though my parents weren't like super toxic like other parents, but we didn't grow up with a lot of money, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we had to be creative. Like when we didn't have toys, we had this book that we'd learn how to make Play-Dohs, we'd learn how to make, all these different things. I don't know if you ever had that growing up. There was the people that would sell these encyclopedias and then these children's
Yeah.
books, right?
Yes.
So we
We
had
had the full set, but we had like 3 sets, bro.
yeah, yeah. And then
That's how I learned English.
oh really?
Yeah. I had 3 months. I had 2.5 months to learn English.
See
Page
what I
one.
mean though,
A.
right?
You know what I'm saying?
It's like we didn't have YouTube, but we were more. I feel like because we grew up in that era that we did, playing out, with the kids, doing all that is different from how kids nowadays with social media, with
Mm-hmm.
YouTube, with Netflix. So I try to get them out. Like this morning, we were playing basketball like at 7:30 a.m. And I said, we got to do this before it gets super hot today. But it's a good thing we
Mm-hmm.
did it because it got super rainy
Mm-hmm.
today, right? It was like the opposite. It rained. Um, but I was telling him, I said, you know what? I said, when I was like your age, I took cardboard boxes and I would cut them up. I would tape them together and tape it to the floor, and I would practice breakdancing on my own. My parents didn't have to be like, "Hey, did you practice your windmill today?" They didn't have to
Mm-hmm.
do that, right? Because I was determined to do windmills and head spins and flares, that I did it on my own. And then I took my dad's camcorder and I would film myself so I could see, okay, where am I going wrong? Like, what am I doing wrong? I said, but you guys don't have that where you just go out and say, hey, I'm going to go practice basketball. I got to go do some squats. I got to do push ups.
Mm-hmm.
I said, you have to learn how to motivate yourself at a young age.
Mm-hmm.
So that way, when you grow up, you don't need anybody else to motivate you.
Yeah.
And that's the way I try to talk to him. Like with the two girls, it's a little bit different. But with Mike, when I talk to him, he gets it. And then he tries to implement, he tries to practice it. And I said, look, I could tell you these things, but like when I tell the girls, they're more like they reject it, right? But he accepts it. I don't know if it's because
Mm-hmm.
it's a guy and guy,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's like a guy and girl, right? So I just let Abby try to,
Yeah. Yeah.
talk to the girls, but I'm like, okay, because you're the only boy in the family,
Yeah.
right? You have to be the leader. So I tell them
Yes.
all the time, you have to be the leader. You have to be the one when they see you doing it, they're gonna want to, do it too.
Yeah.
And so he
Yeah.
does.
I feel that it's as a parent back then, with my parents and everything like that. I think their way of parenting was just through showing and working their butts off and putting
Hmm.
something on a table. I think they missed a lot of opportunities to basically elaborate on certain things,
Hmm.
let us in on historical stuff and everything like that. I think nowadays it's for me, I think it's much harder to parent your household because of all the additional preoccupational stuff that these kids can get to. I mean, imagine, take a look at what we're comparing with. I mean, what we're competing with. You've got you've got social media, you've
Hmm.
got media, you've got
Yep.
TV, you've got everything in their hands. You've got addictions that are out there right now that are in your handheld. I mean, just
Hmm.
betting and everything. I mean, we already know
We're
how
fighting over.
the Asians are so much into our bettings and everything like that. Now it's handheld. We're sitting here also with music, pop music, and everything like that, and just culture stuff. And all of that is trying to invade our household, our familial core, to where I don't like the only way I know how to not combat that, but to assert myself as to where, okay, well, here's where I'm coming from, and you have to take it or leave it, because I'm not going to force it on you, because I'm, like you said, the toxicity level. But I apply it harshly at some points. I get up in their face, because life isn't about just like, pats on the back and everything.
Mhm.
I'll tell you straight to your face, because this, I have the mentality of, it's always and I heard it somewhere. It's like, as a parent, it's not for me to protect you outside of the home. It's not to like protect you for the rest of your life. It's for me to actually give you enough knowledge and as any way as I can, to where as soon as you leave the house, I'm not going to worry about you.
Yep,
And
you're gonna
that's
survive. The culture in the 90s and the early 2000s in America is different from
mhm,
the culture in America today. So
today. Yeah.
so even though we live in the same country, our experiences growing up is different from the kids today,
Yeah.
right? But one thing I know in the Bible is that nothing is new under the sun. So guess what? Have you been hurt? I've been hurt. If
Hmm.
you feel sad, I've been sad. Whatever feeling that an emotion, distress, anxiety that any of these people today are having, we probably had the same one,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? There's no one is exempt from feeling sad. No one
Yeah.
is exempt from being depressed, right? No one is exempt from not sleeping at night, right? We're all going to go through it. There's a book called The Power Within, and he says that everybody must walk their own deep waters. Like you
Oh
can't do
yeah.
it for your kids. I can't do it for them. And I'm already, you're saying that, by the time they turn 13, the chemical imbalance kicks in, right? I'm already anticipating that because I've been 13. I know what it's like.
Absolutely.
They can't surprise us. They can't say, like, you don't know what I'm going through. Yes, we do. So
Yeah.
that's
And
all I
this touch base and this, just us getting together. And I think there's also value in bringing other people on and just talking to them
Yeah.
about it. It's a celebration of, like you said, like previously,
Hmm.
we were, we had gone through all that in the 80s and the simulations. What a celebration it is to come back together and say, here we are.
Yeah. And we know what you're going
Look at
through.
that.
Okay.
I'm gonna let you go. We got the little baby girl already sitting there, bro. All right, we'll touch base again.
All right.
I appreciate you. You have a
All
great
right.
week.
Thank you. You too.
All right, brother.